Live, 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 live. Darshan is fired up, ready to go this morning. Are you caffeinated?
I am. I had a little bit of coffee, which you can't see.
I got some.
I had a lot of Mountain Dew and had a good weekend.
You know that's bad for you, right? But we'll save that for another. We'll have you as a
Mountain
special
Dew
guest
is,
on
is
Dr.
the
Joe's show.
elixir of life. I can tell you that if I had stock in Pepsi, I would put all of it into Mountain Dew. It would do
Wow.
really badly in stocks, but I would be happy that it's still coming. In fact, did you know that there's a right Mountain Dew and that there's a wrong Mountain Dew? And there are two types of wrong Mountain Dew. Did you know that part?
I'm pretty sure they're all wrong, but we'll get Dr. Joe on it. This is Fraud Pod, everyone. Not legal or, God forbid,
Hashtag
medical
fraud pod.
advice, as evidenced by that last statement on Mountain Dew. But thank you, Darshan. Amazing. People look forward to these particular segments of the pod because I have a Guru Nation After Dark with Robert Goldman, who I'm going to introduce you guys to because I think there's magic there. And then with you, there's Fraud Pod, and occasionally I'll do like Latinos in research. So I have like all these segments,
Look at
but
you.
Fraud Pod's one of the most requested, viewed, commented of all because of you, man. You're the star.
You're the big man on campus. We are just the little ones who hang out with you because you're like the cool one. When I used to go to college, there used to be like this one dude in the center, like underneath a tree, like playing the guitar, and all the girls would come hang out around him. Like you're that dude.
Oh man. No, dude, that is not. This is a long time coming. You and I have been interacting since the old Twitter days of 2010. I
Yeah,
remember seeing you with your handle there at FDA Lawyers. I actually
I still
thought
have the
you were an
handle.
FDA lawyer. You lost your handle or you still have it?
No, I still have the handle. I
Okay,
should use
good.
it more. It's a good
You should
handle.
use it more, man. Are
Because I
you
mean,
allowed to use it?
why not? I'm not saying I am the FD. In fact, I'm very clear on that I'm not. But I don't want to give up the handle. It's a really
I
good
just like
handle.
to ask attorneys what you're allowed to do and not just for kicks and giggles.
So many rules. There's
There's
so
way
many
too many.
rules.
We're gonna get into a lot because this is a action-packed segment. Um, but thank you again for coming on this solar eclipse.
Well, it's
I
the
think we're
last
still
one, right?
here.
This is the last time we're doing any kind of fraud pod because the world is ending and the
I think
solar
so.
eclipse is here.
I think it's a possibility. Yeah. So you guys came out at the right time. Like, subscribe, comment, share. If you're watching this in the future, consider yourself lucky. You're one of the survivors.
This is like Lost. Yeah, I don't know if these people even remember Lost, but they're going to be
Oh,
like,
Lost was I was hooked. I don't get hooked on TV shows. I was hooked on that thing. Very disappointed with the ending, but
I feel like
anyway.
Lost had the same problem as Game of Thrones. Great premise, kept going, kept going, kept going, and then
Yeah,
they went,
yeah,
"We don't know what to do with this." He's
yeah,
the king of the north. I don't know. Like someone's there. Fine,
yeah. The
whatever.
writers just, I mean, it's kind of like musicians having to create like new classics every
Right,
time, and then they're like,
right.
"Dang, all my best stuff is already like used."
Are you a
That's what
musician
happened.
now, Dan?
No, I'm not a musician, not at all. Not nowhere close. I enjoy music, but look, there's a couple of things we want to discuss today. Maybe what did you want to start with? Wushi,
Well, we can talk about
WUXI,
Wushi. This
or do you want to
is
start with the site thing first, or
well.
like to get
Let's talk
people's
Wushi
palates wet? Wushi,
because
okay.
when we do Fraud Pod, we do cutting edge news. We do
Yep,
things that affect our sites every single day.
yep.
So let's talk about it. Let's change lives because that's what the title of Fraud Pod should be. We change lives.
No, I
Right.
think it should be Fraud Pod. We love fraud.
No, no, please don't. Please don't. We love fraud is not going to be the direction we want to take this.
And then
Uh,
three dots as a topic
okay, as a
to
topic,
make it
a
clear,
little
but
long.
only after the three dots. So it's a
I
clickbait,
bet
man.
not legal
You gotta
advice.
you gotta get good at the clickbait, man. Come on. Well, okay, Wushi. I've been following Wushi for a while. When I remember in my early days of investing, like 2011, I think it was exactly 2011 actually. I was looking at CROs to buy stocks. I currently own zero. Um,
Really?
yeah,
What
I
Wushi you
used to
mean?
mess
Or just
around.
stocks?
Wuxi was one of them that I was like, oh, I need to get it, because
Yeah,
they're
I don't know
the
any stocks.
largest China. Yeah, right now I just mess with like a few biotechs and Tesla, but
Well, that's
Wushi
not doing
was
well for you right now.
no,
Tesla's
it's
down.
horrible. It's horrible, man. Don't talk to me about stocks right now. But Wushi was one that made so much sense. Like, hey, they're the largest Chinese CRO. Obviously, China is a growth area. This was a decade ago or more when it was still not clear that China was going to be so dominant
Right.
in life sciences.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they became. And so I thought, okay, a perfect value prop, like the market leader in this. Like, how can you go wrong? And I just messed around with it a little. I think Charles River Labs came in. I don't know if they acquired or partner with them. I can't remember the details, but Wushi's still around, which tells you something. But what's going on? Maybe they're just not in for a good thing.
Well, so I like you do a significant amount of investing in stocks, and quite honestly, till Jan or Feb, I was up 45% of my stocks, which was crazy. But
Wow.
that doesn't include the fact that I was down like 50% for the last 2 years
Mm.
because unlike you, I don't invest in biotech. I try to avoid investing as much as possible. I do think I have a little bit of Novo Nordisk right now,
Nice.
maybe Lilly. I don't know.
Got a
Um,
little of the Zempies, a little of the GLP ones.
that's I was trying to literally hold on to the GLP ones. I think that
If
there's
you're
still.
long those, you're long obesity for the country. So that's
I'm sorry, you're talking to the fat guy right now.
yeah.
I'm
There
already
you
long on obesity here.
Mountain Dew. We started out with Mountain Dew.
Exactly. We we love sugar. Dot dot dot. No, there's nothing after the dot dot dot. We just love sugar.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
nothing else.
but anyway, so the point we were making was Wushi. I feel like Wushi was there. I remember hearing about it a long time ago. I never followed the stock, but I thought it's Wushi Aptech. And again, someone, if you're listening, tell us how you pronounce this because Dan and I had a whole conversation about how do you actually say it. Is
No,
it
no, I
Wushi?
googled it. It's Wushi. You were right. You were right.
Oh, okay, okay, I'll take it. But can you trust? Can you trust Mother Google? Code Red. There you go.
I mean, if
Uh,
you can't, yeah, Code Red, Farm D,
he-
he knows something. I'm out of the loop. So what's going on? Like
okay.
CCP owns this or what?
Well, so I don't think they own it, but there's a whole thing going on that allegedly there's something called the Biosecure Act that might come out. People are still talking about it. It's not a done deal yet, but the allegation is, as you know, China and the U.S. is sort of decoupling. The U.S. feels like it's too dependent on China. China feels like the U.S. is not giving it as much information as it should, and they want to be more independent. And the result of it is that they're decoupling. I don't know if it's a done deal yet. They're still talking. I believe Janet Yellen was in China or talking to China like as late as yesterday about these types of issues. But the concern is that um, China in general is taking data from the US and applying it in China. China always been accused of IP issues. This is not to say that they're doing it. Again, I still stand by the statement of innocent until proven guilty. But the allegation is that they're taking IP from the US and using it for domestic growth.
Sure.
Now that we have AI, now that we have biotech growing the way it is, and you have a decoupling, the US is going, we want to be more protective. The allegation also is that Wuxi is instrumental in taking US IP and giving it into China, which again devalues the IP in the US. But what does that mean for sites? I mean, all this is great news, but what does that mean for sites? It means that you are sites are being told, well, not sites, pharma companies are being told that if you do business with Wuxi, that could be problematic, and it could
Right.
mean things like government
Sites are
funding is
being
not being
told,
spent.
honestly, sites are being told the same thing. I've done recently a study with a Chinese company, had a relatively good experience, but not every site did. And then I've worked with a few in the past
Right.
and have had decent experiences, but I've been told many times, do not work with as a site, do not work with a Chinese sponsor. Do not, they run out of money. They don't necessarily have to honor their contracts if things go
Uh,
bad. I've
I don't
been
think that's
told
fair.
that.
I see that with U.S. sponsors all the time. I don't think that's a
Yeah,
fair criticism. I think there
right.
are other things you need to do to address sponsors that run out of money. Um, I my big issue with non-US sites in general. I think what you're describing is a non-US problem,
Sponsor.
sponsor problem. Yeah, because I've had similar problems with India. I've had similar problems with Japan, some
Yeah,
European companies. So
yeah.
it's if you run out, you're now dealing with international payments. So you need to have a better system to structure your payments. And you and I should have a fraud pod on how do you deal with that issue, anyways. But the bigger question is not, well, how do you make sure that these companies pay you? The question is, can you even work with these companies? Because it can
Mm.
affect reimbursement. It can affect whether the sponsors are allowed to work with them. And they're being told that it may become problematic. The result of it was as of March 14th, so that's what, less than a month ago.
Yeah, a
Uh,
few weeks ago.
yeah. Uh, Bio, for example, said that Lilly, Johnson Johnson, hundreds of other companies said that they're cutting ties with Wushi Aptech as part of U.S. national security efforts. The result of that was Wushi's Hong Kong listed shares were 13% lower, and biotech and Wushi's biologics unit declined by 14%, and their biologics contract medical research unit fell 16%. Pretty big. Those are
Yeah, I think the
huge.
game's over for Wuxi, at least in the U.S. Like we won't be hearing about them anymore.
Well, but Wuxi is just, for the most part, at least from what I can gather, it's more of a service provider. What happens to the
Yeah, it's like a
companies that
CRO, and
exactly?
especially like early stage CRO.
They do a lot more than that. They don't just do CRO work. They do, I believe, they're also in technology. They're also in a few different ways. They're pretty
Well, of
big
course,
conglomerate,
all the CROs have like some tech aspects. They try to stay relevant, and
right? Uh,
that's where the money's made in the CRO. It's hey, well, we have this ePro. Okay, now you got to use this. Now you use this IRT, and boom, pretty soon it's like
I
10x the
mean,
budget.
every company I talk to goes, we want to become the next Viva. Viva is the behemoth in the room. I'm not saying
Shout
shout out
out
to
to
Viva there,
Viva. Thank you for that, Darshan.
but the truth is, you're also seeing companies go. We're seeing sponsors say we want to do one component, not all the components. And with Viva, you buy into the full system, um,
Right.
and and it's again different strokes for different folks. So we're not dissing on anyone. It's just that's just how companies
Hmm.
are. Either you want to buy into the full ecosystem, or you're buying into one component of it. But the big takeaway is: are you going to continue to do business with Wushi? And what is the implication on, for example, your payments? Because, for example, one of the things you mentioned was, well, what happens if Wushi stops doing business? Well, how is that going to affect the payments that you're due? Make sure you get your invoices and make sure you get paid for your invoices. I have a client who hasn't submitted invoices from a year ago because they're just, I mean, it's busy. Sites are busy right now.
Hmm.
So they're still catching up, and we should probably have a conversation on how do high performing sites work. You and I were talking about that.
Well,
One
that's
way
a
to
good
be a
topic. Yeah.
one way to be a high performing site, make sure you get paid for the work and effort you put in. If you
Well, of
chase the next,
course.
you would
Of
think
course.
so.
But this is like so as a site, you do things to mitigate risk. Like I always vet a sponsor when I get a study. I always look at the website. I'm like, okay, are they publicly traded? If not, this is a bit of a red flag unless they're like a Boehringer Ingelheim or some conglomerate.
Okay.
But if they're a company I never heard of, and by the way, a lot of Chinese sponsors fall into this. You go
Hmm.
on their website, it's not even in English, and
Sure.
you're like, okay,
Google
how am
Translate.
I? How do I know? Yeah, well, even before that, in my head, how do I know I'm gonna get paid from here? Let me see what else I could find. I do this for all the sponsor, and there are U.S. European sponsors that are known
Yeah.
to have not paid sites.
Right.
Romark was one, a big one. I'll call them out. Romark just said peace out after a COVID study and left hundreds of sites holding the bag, and they got off scot free because they're in Europe. So these things go through your head. Like worst case, I need to get paid, and then there's little steps you can do. I'm not doing anything till I get my study startup fee. You get that? Okay, I'm putting one patient. Now I'm not doing another till I get paid for this visit. Okay, now you can start seeing, okay, they're going to pay. Let's enroll more. For the ones that we have like high risk profile on,
Right.
uh that's kind of how I do it. Like, and if I don't get that study startup, well, I'm not screening anyone until I get this study startup. I don't trust you guys. You're not Eli Lilly.
uh, so I'd say a couple of different things. So number one, I have sites that have disappeared on me, and you and I have discussed that before with sites
Yeah.
who literally disappear on me. You try to address that using some level of I need to be paid certain amount of money up front. I need a retainer, blah blah blah. But I think it's true with any kind of startup or what I refer to as companies that are less than say $10 million in revenue,
Mhm.
because these companies have growth issues. Like the usual way any business, it doesn't matter what kind of business it is, you start by trying to get the business off the ground. That means you're trying to put out fires. Every fire is unique. You're trying to make sure that that fire is put out. As you put systems in place, those fires become normalized. They become, we have a process for this, just follow the process. Everything's going to be okay. But there is a movement, a learning curve that you have to go through. And the companies that come out on the other side of that learning curve are stronger, more compliant, but quite honestly, better funded and structured properly. So when you've moved away from the putting out individual fires to the we have a structure, we have a system in place, that's when you start seeing that. So $5 to $10 million is when you start seeing companies having the revenue to pull that off. You take a early startup out of China or you take it out of the US, you're gonna have the same exact problem. If they're early startups, they're still putting out individual fires. This is the first clinical trial they're doing, and now they're going, well, cash. I didn't realize the cash flow is this much, or the site wants money up front, but the CRO wants money up front, but the IT vendor wants money up front. How do I do all of those? I can't, so I'm going to shut down because they've never faced that fire before.
Right.
So it's often getting a company that has had experience with that type of fire. And I think if you are a site and you are dealing with new sponsors, I think you're right in looking at vendors. Looking them up on the website.
Of
But you may
course.
also look at startups, and there are other channels out there where you can look at how well funded are they, who's funding them.
Yeah, yeah. I even U.S. company like biotechs. I mean, number one, there's the financial aspect. Number two is the
Yeah.
science component. Like I run that part by my sub I's, PIs. Hey, does this make like science sense to you? Or like,
Oh,
okay, is it interesting? All right, let's look now. They're publicly traded, but they're very small cap, very volatile. It's still worth, do you think it's worth the risk? Yeah, okay. Well, let's go. And if they say no, science, I don't like it. Okay. No need to waste time on the financial vetting component.
see, I'm going to disagree there, and I'll tell you why. So this is going back to Theranos. Everyone was talking about Theranos at one point, 2014, 2015. I'd get these calls from people going, hey, should I invest in Theranos? And I'm like, I don't know enough about the company. And I'm not going to sit and do a bunch of research on the company if I'm not investing in them. I couldn't invest in them because they might become a client. So I try not to spend too much
Serious?
money on.
Maybe
Well, they
that's
never
the
did.
clickbait title. Darshan represents Theranos.
I did not. Just to be very, very clear, I did no such thing.
I,
Uh, but the truth is, if they would have reached out, I probably would have. Because the fact is that everyone deserves representation. Um, but I think the idea is, I don't know if I could have changed the outcome. I think the outcome, based on what I read, was a guarantee, anyways.
you see the
Uh,
movie or the show on
I did,
Hulu?
I
Or
did see the show on Hulu.
lady was
Um,
crazy.
she was crazy. The Indian dude was crazy.
Indian dude was crazy as shit, but the lady who was on the cover of every magazine was crazy.
She, we're sort of going off topic here, but I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. We'll come back
what,
soon. Don't worry.
what she struggled with, I think, is what I think of as the West Coast hype. Fake it till you make it. And I think that in general,
Yeah,
if you are around Silicon Valley, that's how you succeed. You succeed by
sure.
saying, I'm successful. And if you get enough people to believe you, you will be successful. And that works great in tech because the tech philosophy is
Yeah.
break things, move quickly.
Right.
But it doesn't work in pharma or biotech or even med devices in the same way.
No,
But
because you're dealing with people's health outcomes, not someone's social media fix. So it's
exactly.
totally different. Um, Code Red, I see. We'll come
I
back
just
to
want to
it.
be clear. It is not Code Red is the redheaded stepchild of the Mountain Dew family.
So,
Uh, you know what? I don't want to hear it. I can't believe someone's even saying Code Red. The orange one is where the real money is. I can't even remember what it's called. It is so good. It is
man,
my
I got to get you on with Dr. Joe show. That's another podcast. Okay, so vetting sponsor, we got to do a whole pod on this. But
yeah,
you were saying sites, successful sites. So
yeah,
Chinese, let's just wrap this Chinese thing up.
yeah.
I think the party's over, honestly, for these Chinese companies in the U.S. I think there's clearly
There's a
a
dip for sure.
shift in the way our government is handling anything China, and you can just look at TikTok and go down from there. Uh, I think it's over. I think it's
uh,
over.
I think we're at a important global crossroads. And what do I mean by that? I think one of two things is going to happen. One is I can't handle the truth, uh, but I love it. A few good men. You give me a movie reference, I can do movie references. Do not give me a sports reference. I'm totally lost with sports references.
That's right.
But anyway, so the point I was making is I think that based on what Janet Yellen is saying, um, the U.S. is not going to be, in my opinion, as tied to China as it was, say, 5 years ago. I think we've learned a few lessons along the way. But between COVID, between the fact that China is now a serious competitor, I would be surprised if the US is tied to China in the same way. But that's not to say that those companies can't do well on their own. I think they have a massive global following. I think they are trying to feed their own local markets, and all of that is going to have its own advantages. But from what I gather, and I have to recognize that I only see US media. So to the extent I see US media, I only see information that US media wants us to read. Um, those companies may be feeding more of Europe, maybe feeding more of Australia, maybe feeding more of Asia Pacific. So maybe there's a whole growth story there that we simply aren't seeing. So if you're investing in the stock market there, that still makes sense. As a US site, I would expect fewer and fewer things to come through
Oh yeah.
unless Janet Yellen changes that and she controls how the process will happen. So that
No. It does. Yeah, I think it's over. I mean, anecdotally, and look, I
right, no,
it's anecdotes, right? When in the absence of data lies anecdotes. Like anecdotes are the truth. 2 months ago, I had a really good study. Interested in it. I emailed. First of all, it's very rare to get like a reply back when you send an outbound email unsolicited from a sponsor
yeah,
within less than a day or two. The norm is you don't get a reply back. So when I got one back minutes later, it
from
was a
whom?
Chinese biotech,
Got it.
small one.
Yeah,
In broken English, yes, we're definitely interested in your site. I mean, there was no way I was gonna proceed. Like we actually set it up. Let's do a site selection visit because the me and the
you're
PI
like
were
a
actually
jilted
curious.
girlfriend. You know that? You're like,
No, no,
I want you, I love you. Wait, you respond, I hate you, I don't want you anymore. The moment they
exactly
respond, you're
because
like, I don't want you.
I send like 10 a week, so to all kinds of companies. And so when you get one back, you're like, "Oh, interesting. Okay. Let's look at the drug. Okay, interesting. Let's see what the PI says. Okay, boom. Okay, let's schedule site selection visit." As soon as we got to that process, they ghosted. Like totally
Time
unprofessional.
wasted. Yeah,
Yeah, so, I'm kind of done personally with
but are you
Chinese
done with
biotech for
international or
now.
just Chinese? Like, why pick on
No, no,
China?
just Chinese, just Chinese.
Why
In light of what's going on with the U.S.
the,
China
the
relations.
biosecurity part? Okay, but would you,
Yeah,
if you got Vietnam, how would a Vietnamese startup be different than a Chinese startup in your eyes? Just the biosecurity issue or something else?
just the fact that I haven't worked with them yet, and I haven't
Okay,
been burned. I
okay,
mean,
okay.
once you're burned like once or twice, you
Yeah,
kind of get more suspicious of similar
fair enough.
companies, right?
Fair enough. I just didn't know how you define similar. It could be anything from non-US to startups to Chinese.
No, no,
Any of those could.
Chinese. Yeah,
Okay,
Chinese.
fair enough.
CCP. I mean, I think maybe we can agree we don't trust the CCP, or is that also you're gonna say something neutral on that as well?
I'll tell you what I'm going to say. I'm going to say I'd like to one day go to China, and I think
Uh,
if the CCP listens to this podcast, they will be
yeah, they
like,
get the facial recognition.
exactly.
Darshan is good. Darshan.
I'd like to leave the country at the end of the visit. So,
I'd like to go to China one day too.
well, I think you just destroyed those chances right now.
Nah, I think we're okay. I think we're still okay. I don't think they're that crazy over there. But anyways, sites. You had the idea
Well,
to do something
yeah.
the second half on sites.
So I think we talked a little bit about this idea of high performing sites. Let me ask a really easy question. Um, do you need to have an agreement with your PIs as a site?
No, sir. It's
I
let's go. PI, if you like this, like to me, the agreement is when they sign the CTA, when they sign the back of that 1572, and then I'll give them the CDA. The agreement also, from not legal, but from a practical standpoint, is they don't know how to do this without me. They don't have, it's my staff doing the work, not his or hers. And I've yet to be burned in 15, no, 19 years now using this strategy.
I'll tell you why you're wrong. I
Ultimately
think
they
it's
become
terrible.
LLC partners. That's the I want to put that in there. The goal is they want to become LLC partners, and that is on the handshake. Like, hey, let's try one or two studies as a contractor. You're gonna be independent contractor, and then if you like it and I like you, we'll do LLC. I don't mind.
I think independent contractor is fine, but you need to have an independent contractor agreement. I
I've
think
had those before, but generally I
right.
don't waste time. If I know I'm gonna do a LLC thing like in two studies away, we'll just. I mean, that's a template. Like,
So I'll tell you why you need it. A
yeah,
really simple reason you need it.
yeah.
If you are, my hand's really fuzzy with this, but if you are negotiating a clinical trial agreement with the sponsor or with the CRO, a major component for a sponsor or CRO is protecting their intellectual property, protecting their publication rights, protecting the confidential information. Those are non-negotiable, critical pieces that they want. One of those, almost every single time, the agreement in there will say, you will make sure that everyone on the site will ensure that our information is protected. You will not share information with people who are not appropriately protected or have the appropriate agreements in place. And basically, you will protect our information and ensure that if there's a problem, they will turn over information to us so that we can appropriately protect it. The
But
moment
isn't
you
that stated in the contract? CTA, the
so
1572,
I'm
the
talking about the CTA.
CDA.
So I'm talking about the CTA will not be in your CDA. It's highly unlikely to be in your CDA. The
No,
CDA is
the
only
sponsor
covering
CDA,
confidentiality.
right?
No, the sponsor CDA is only going to the confidentiality provision, not the IP provisions. So the IP provisions, proprietary information components in there, the publication rights will all be in your CTA.
CTA, yeah.
Your 1572 has nothing to do with any of that.
Right.
But your CTA will, for the most part, or if you have an MSA, either one, the CTA or the MSA, um, will always say, you will protect all of my intellectual property. So unless you have the PI sign off on the CTA, and usually, depending on the size of the site, I will either say, I don't want my PI signing off, or you will say, I will have my PI sign off saying acknowledge, not agree. Uh,
Mm.
because the idea is that they can be subject to a lot of those components in there. And I don't want anyone who's unnecessary signing things that they don't have to.
But who, like, the doctors I work with,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have time to steal the IP or worry about publishing rights. These are busy community
Oh, you
clinics.
would be surprised. You would be surprised how many of them do this. I had, again, remember I work on all these different sides, right? I had a sponsor I was dealing with. I was representing the sponsor in this case in a completely different situation. And the sales rep came to me and went, we're working on this new AI type scenario. The doctor's giving us all the patient medical records. I'm like, wait a second, how are you getting these patient medical records? Oh, the doctor's happy to give them to us because he wants to be like a good friend of ours, so that we'll do more studies with him, or we'll do more work with him, whatever. The doctor had no idea he shouldn't be doing that. He didn't know about HIPAA. He didn't care about HIPAA. He was just giving the data just because he thought it's a good idea and it'll help patients at the end. Realistically, he probably also wanted to be involved.
But he was the PI?
It was a different situation. It was actually
Okay.
He was doing a different thing altogether. But the point is, doctors are smart at what they do.
Right.
Doesn't mean that they're smart at everything. And law is not what they're smart at. That's why
But they also
yeah.
a lot of them also know like what their limitations are. Like the last thing a lot of these guys want to like, what's the concern? It's the IP. Like you want to do independent contractor agreement because you're trying to protect the sponsor's IP from.
Well, you're required by the clinical trial agreement to protect the IP, right? So how are you going to enforce that the doctor turns over the IP to you? You have nothing. You don't have a contract with the doctor.
Well, you keep control of it. We keep it in our office, in our
Yeah,
side.
but the doctor actually worked in the study. He's seen the IP. It's not confidential anymore.
He doesn't even have the key, Darshan. Like we got the key.
He has a password. He's writing the information down.
He's writing that,
purposes,
yeah.
For all practical purposes, he has the IP.
Okay.
Again, just to be clear, not legal advice. Will be situation dependent. But
so just the CYA as a site.
You have to have it. It's not even a CYA. It's like critical, basic components in there.
And
now
having
the question
them sign
becomes,
the CTA is not enough.
The CTA, well, again, what are you making him sign on the CTA? Are you going to make him a signatory? Or are you going to say he's just acknowledging that this exists? Those are two different
now
things.
I have to look carefully because I know the sponsors always require the PI to sign it, but I don't think we pay attention to what.
The other question is, if I'm the doctor, my question is, am I saying that I agree? Because did you even read the thing? What are you agreeing to?
Yeah, they don't read
and that's a huge problem. For example, you might be agreeing that if something goes wrong, you're on the hook for XYZ.
But do you think they'll read the independent contractor agreement? They won't read that either.
Well, if they don't read that, then at least you're protected as a site, and you have the components in there. So again, it all depends on whose side I'm representing, right?
I got you. But what about like if they do become a business partner? Like then you have a fiduciary, right?
So fiduciary duty as a business partner. First of all, if you you have a better argument, right? You're in a better place once you have he's a business owner. But you now have to deal with other elements. For example, a very common setup in clinical trials is that you will own the clinical research element that fits in to the doctor's office. So you will pay the CRA, the CRC who'll go in. You'll pay the I don't know, the pharmacist, as you put it, the unlicensed pharmacist will go and blah blah blah. Okay. I'm so not touching that.
Make it sound so bad. Jeez.
But either way, the situation is that, number one, do you have a HIPAA agreement in place between your site and the doctor's office? And I can tell you most don't. And the fact is you need to have a HIPAA agreement in place because if this information is health information, it needs to be protected. Even a simple sign-off, because a lot of these HIPAA deals, like you can't really negotiate them because they're regulatory required.
Right, they're federal law.
They're federal law. But the fact is that whether or not they're federal law, you need to have them in place, but you don't. Most sites don't. So that's usually a problem.
I'm not confirming or denying this.
Exactly. We're not talking about any individual site. We're talking about overall.
Yeah. I think that actually do have the.
Good for you.
Yeah, I think we actually do have that.
But I think the point is not whether you have it. The point is, again, we're talking about the audience, right? And
what you need. What you need.
Exactly.
What you're gonna come back and get you later, possibly.
Correct.
Does the FDA look at like HIPAA agreements and things like this?
Yeah. And OCR will come after you, Office of Civil Rights. That's who actually controls HIPAA. And that's not getting into things like CMEA, which California is very, very big about. They just had a recent enforcement action because of patient privacy issues. And that's not counting things like Chicago, which has its own rules. So Illinois Bioprivacy Act. et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's state level laws, there are federal level laws. FTC has its own issues, cybersecurity issues. So you need
Mm.
to have some basic components in there. For
Just like
example,
a simple paragraph,
yeah,
clinic XYZ allows research site YCT access to HIPAA protected data.
yeah. It might no. There's an actual component in there. They actually have formats you can pull from. So you're not reinventing the wheel. There's
Mm.
actually like templates you can use. Most people modify them a little bit to make them more specific, but you should have they're like templates to start off from. Don't put a paragraph in there. But
More like
yes,
4 pages. Yeah.
it's like 4 pages, something like
Mm.
that. Again, don't sit. This was another thing a site asked me recently. They were like, sometimes I don't like to hire a lawyer because it gets so expensive. Because you guys are then sitting down and writing the agreement out. No one's got time to write out a full agreement. Like they're going to take something they have, adapt it for what you're using.
Right.
Um,
You already have the tools. You
exactly.
just tweak it, or sometimes the site owner can tweak it too. Like here's the
Yeah,
template. Go
absolutely.
tweak it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Just know what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to, and you'll see a lot of site owners make that mistake. But you can do it yourself. Not everything I do is theoretically based on experience, knowledge, and common sense. And sometimes you have all three, and that's great. Sometimes you're missing one, and how important is it?
Yeah.
But uh, that's what it comes down to. So,
So productive sites.
I mean, we can talk about elements in a clinical trial agreement that, sorry, not a clinical trial agreement, agreement between a PI and a site that simply, like we talked about a single component. I'm trying to pull up an example I just worked on recently.
Hmm.
Let me see.
But you were saying highly productive
So,
sites.
so let me give you, yeah. So the highly productive sites. Let's talk about some important components in there. For example, if you are a site who's working with a potential PI, how are you going to make sure that the PI doesn't go start up his own site or gets rid of you and starts up their own site?
Handshake.
And
Uh,
what you're
here's
that handshake is doing a lot of work right now.
the handshake's busy, and the saliva. Sometimes you get dry. Listen, this is a complex business.
Yeah,
I've had PIs do this
yeah,
actually in the past,
yeah.
very long time ago. Um,
It's
with
actually coming up a lot recently in a lot of the companies.
Yeah,
I've had
it's
I've
fine.
had multiple sites mention this to me
You can
in the last
try.
2 weeks.
I always tell our clients, just because you think they're not gonna succeed,
Yeah,
right? The fact that they're trying is enough to ruin your thing with them. Like they're done. They're done with you once they do that. So whether they succeed or not's irrelevant. They left you.
yeah,
Like you lost. You just lost,
yeah.
right? So I don't think scaring them away works on a lot of these people, but I think making it super hard for them to replicate. Like the doctors I work with, man, the last thing they want, they barely even have time with us and our infrastructure to be a PI, let
Right.
alone doing it on their own. I'm not gonna say never. There's no likely way they would ever do this. Like
I see it
they wouldn't
every day.
even attempt.
I see it every day. So if you're talking from a site's perspective, not a PI's perspective, again, I have a different
Mhm.
perspective when I'm representing PIs. But from a site's perspective, do you have an exclusivity agreement? How
Nope.
wide is your exclusivity agreement? How does that compete compare to your non-compete? And when you're talking about both of those, the exclusivity versus non-compete, on top of that, you talk about some protections in there. Who owns, for example, do you have a non-solicit saying that
Yeah.
they can't hire your consultants, your employees to go work with him after the fact?
Yeah. No,
So
I don't have any of that. My employees would never want to leave me to go with someone else. They all know that. They will all tell you this. And the sponsors, if it boils down to picking them apart one by one, we can do that too. We can play that game and see who's gonna win. Like to me, these things always scared the PIs away. Like it's a burden, like it's a hurdle towards getting started, that I
Yeah.
like to eliminate. Like if they want to go rogue, let them go rogue. Good luck to them. Merry Christmas. There's only
My
one of me in town, and there's like what, at least 20 others like them in my town.
But here's the difference. Once they learn everything they can from you, then they go, I'm the one, I'm the PI. I'm doing this work.
Yeah, and you
Everything else I can do.
as a
Right.
site owner, you got to go into this knowing that's a possibility.
Yeah.
And realistically, the ones I work with, there's no way. And the ones that I suspect might,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, maybe not work with this one. I just
Right.
cut it off from the very beginning, like either yes or no. It's very binary. And I
Yeah.
think what you're referring to is like when you don't know, or just treat them all the same.
I
Here's a
would treat them all the
blanket.
same.
Yeah,
I would treat them
yeah,
all the same because I think number one, your gut check has come after 15 years of doing this.
yeah,
The newer, younger sites don't have a gut check yet. Number
yeah.
two, you still get burnt after
Still,
all of this.
yeah.
So gut check takes you. Let's
It'll
be honest.
happen again.
Everyone's
It'll
hopefully,
happen again.
yeah,
Hopefully not here in Yuma, but at some point it will.
yeah. And the truth is, everyone thinks that they can do better than whatever they're doing right now. Ambition is a real thing.
Right, right.
And maybe it's as simple as Dr. X in Yuma going, "Hey, if I start a site in I don't know, California, it's not really competition, is it? And maybe I'll go do that. Is that still competition? Maybe, maybe not. If you don't have an agreement, if you don't define what competition is he or she doing something wrong? I don't know.
Yeah,
But those are the questions you need to address.
yeah,
Those are the
yeah,
questions you need to know as a high performing site. What do you care about? Put those lines in the sand so that you can go, look, we put this down on paper for a reason. You aren't following those rules. So it's not a question of, I didn't think you would see it this way. I didn't see it this way, blah, blah, blah
yeah,
questions.
yeah. Yep, yep. So
All right.
far, every PI, we have 5 of them here in Yuma. They're all, we own 5 different LLCs with the mother company owning all, but
Yeah.
they're all like a business partner now. They're all
Right.
LLC co-owners. They have a
Right.
fiduciary. So you, and I think you would agree that I have a better chance
Yeah, I think
under
you have a
that
better chance.
scenario.
I think that
Yeah,
helps, for sure.
yeah,
But then the question becomes, let's talk about structuring it so that the physician is part owner. That
yeah,
has its own implications. So, for example, let's assume that, and again, this is where I will be honest, like this is not my core area of expertise. I'd call in a Stark law expert. But let's say you are the physician who has his own clinical practice site, and he's going to refer work to his clinical trial site where he owns X percentage.
right.
Is that considered to be a violation of the Stark law? Because he gets to double dip into the amount of money he's getting.
I'm not touching that one. I don't
I'm not
know.
touching that one either.
I
But
know
the
when they're in the study, they don't bill insurance while they're in the study,
well, first of
unless
all,
it's for
you have something in your contract saying that.
no. Sponsors
Exactly.
don't touch this either.
So no. Every sponsor I've ever looked at, every CTA I've ever looked at, will include the words, "You will bill in, third-party payers XYZ times." It'll usually be once or twice before you bill us. That's very, very standard across most CTAs.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We don't like the study visits completely separate what they do in their private practice to
So
us.
exactly. So the point becomes you need to draw that distinction. And what is a study visit? What is the private practice? What is standard of care? What is
Right.
study protocol? That all needs to
But
be
what if
done.
it's clear, like we use Creo, they don't even know what Creo is on their private practice? Like, is that
No,
enough?
no, because you might bill for the same. It's the same patient, right? So let's say you're doing a oral glucose tolerance test, and let's say the standard of care is once a year you're allowed to do one, and the insurance company will pay for it. You're doing that for 200 patients. The average cost is $200 times 200 patients. That's $40,000. The sponsor will say, "You guys bill for that." And if we ask you to do it 5 times in the trial, the remaining 4 will pay for because it's part of our study. But the first one, you need to bill the insurance company because that is part of the patient's
Mm,
care.
I see. I see. Same thing with the X-rays, right? If patient
Correct.
has osteoarthritis of the knee,
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
sponsor wants the X-ray. We tell the vendor, "Hey, don't bill their insurance, bill us."
Right.
Oftentimes, they don't do it. They bill the insurance,
And that's
right?
problematic, hugely problematic.
Yeah,
So,
especially if they're in a study where the standard of care and the study lines get blurry.
and that's the problem. They often get blurry.
But
You,
the FDA doesn't actually audit this kind of stuff, right?
CMS does. CMS does.
CMS does,
OIG does. Yeah,
right?
very much so. And they will
Right.
go after sites
They
for
will go
this.
after sites,
Absolutely, they will go after sites. In fact, there was one recently, a couple of weeks
but
ago.
the site must have owned the private practice too.
No, I don't think they did. I'd have to double check. Honestly, I
Mm.
didn't look into how it was structured.
I mean, the truth is, if sites want to commit fraud or cut corners, they can, and
But the
that's a
thing is,
stupid thing.
the problem is not that they're trying to commit fraud. They may simply not know because there's
Yeah.
so many moving parts. If you're operating your site properly, there are 1,000 moving parts,
Oh yeah.
all with different things going on with them,
Yeah. Yep.
and you'll just miss things.
You'll miss
And
things. Yeah. And the it's a double edged sword too. Of like back to working with the PIs as a partner,
right,
because if you get 5 different specialists, right, in a
correct,
community,
right,
and you have the agreement, hey, I'll bring you cardio studies,
yep,
I will
yep,
bring you internal medicine studies.
yep,
What do you do when one study could go either way? And
right.
then one of the PIs gets upset. Well, why didn't I get that one? Well, because internal medicine was better, but now that's breach of fiduciary. You should
And
have
and that
brought that to me.
and that's exactly how it's helpful to define what the scope is. And you might
Mhm.
say you might rank your trials. Sorry, not your trials. Your agreements, the ownership agreements, to say that, you know what, I disclose that I'm working with these 2 or 3 other sites. If there is a situation in which I have a competing interest, it'll go to this type of trial. These types of trials will go to this site versus your site, and you recognize and accept that, so that you don't have problems later on. You'll get situations where PIs will sue sites because, for example, they might argue that you should have continued doing the study with me. Well, dude, you were convicted of fraud. I can't work with you.
See,
I've seen situations like that.
I mean, why didn't they know there was fraud before? Like the site. That's bad due diligence. Like, what are you doing? What kind of.
Let me ask you this question. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking in general. You know
I'll
sites.
answer it as me.
No, but I don't want you to answer it as you.
Oh,
My
okay.
point is in general. The question is, how many sites are going and doing a background check? I don't mean just a typical background check, a fraud level check across the exclusionary list on OIG, DOJ, HHS, FDA before you even bring someone on.
You do like a license check,
Yeah,
disciplinary actions.
right.
Oftentimes that does include, I've
You get
seen it
lucky sometimes.
include
Yes,
tax issues.
sure.
Um, and I've seen sponsors tell us, no, you can't use that PI because of this, which was
Right,
like 12 years ago.
right.
Um, but no, to your point, I mean, that's basic. That like license check for disciplinary actions and a basic Google search, maybe until you get to page 5, uh, is enough, I think. But
So not
you
touching
would
this.
you love coming on this fraud pod, Darshan. This is like the easiest, lowest hanging fruit you've ever had as an attorney. Easy
How
pickings.
to avoid malpractice 101.
So you're talking about OIG, so like insider trading type stuff. You're
No,
talking
no, no,
about
no, 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 no. OIG is just Office of Inspector General for HHS. Insider trading, you're thinking for like SEC stuff. And there was a
SEC.
whole conviction
Okay,
on that. And they
yeah.
have their own OIG, by the way.
But usually Google search will show out all these things.
So, again, part of standard compliance processes
Yeah.
for any type of government payers, etc., is that you have to make sure that these people are not excluded. And that often requires looking at, and you should have a clause in your agreement saying you will notify me if you've been excluded or if you may
I
get
see.
excluded.
I see.
But on top
Because
of
the
that,
problem is if it happens after you partnered.
correct, correct.
Hmm.
And you should be checking up on them and going, okay, we do this check. We look in the excluded list for FDA. We look in the HHS excluded list. We look at your license.
So okay,
And
how about this hypothetical? Okay,
yeah,
I partner with a pulmonologist.
yeah,
We agree to do respiratory studies, blah blah blah. He or she agrees, everything's good. 2 years into it, he gets disciplinary action outside of research for something
yeah, yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm made aware of it. Next time I apply for a study, sponsor's like, "Hey, we can't. Doctor such and such has
Right.
this. What do you
Yeah,
know? I don't know anything." I talk to him. He tells me. I say, "Hey, we're not gonna be able to get any more studies. We're gonna dissolve the company. I'm done."
yeah.
That's it, right? Is that
Well, number one, depends on what happened between those two periods. So, for example, there are laws that specifically say that you can't bill Medicare, Medicaid for any work done by an excluded individual who's either temporarily or permanently excluded. Now, we talked about this messiness, if you will, on sometimes it's unclear whether it's something was standard of care or if it was part of research. Now, if you take something that is either one, but it's happening through your trial, and you've billed Medicare and Medicaid, you've committed fraud by that definition.
right? I don't even know how to bill Medicaid, Medicare as a site.
But you won't be doing it, right? It's the doctor who's doing it as part of his practice
As
and
part of his
saying,
practice.
right,
The only time
not
that's an
visibility.
issue with possible double dipping is if we have a study visit for that patient and
Yep.
that same day they have a private practice visit. Even like it can't possibly be in the same hour if they're with us, but like that same day,
No, but you're
right?
making or they may just I've seen versions of this as well. The doctor will go visit the patient,
Mhm.
record the meeting in both the patient notes and the study notes. Because still technically, from the doctor's perspective, I'm trying to keep track of my patients. So
Right.
that and now the question becomes, does the doctor or someone in his staff bill for that visit separately?
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
so they may say, I'm just recording, whether it's a miscommunication, whether it's intentional, they may land up billing anyways.
Right.
And
And
you'd never
mistakes
know.
happen. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. But then I mean if who's in charge of this? You said OCR or Medicaid,
OIG, Office of
CMS?
Inspector General, and
Okay,
CMS.
OIG comes, they tell the site, says, "Hey, we have no control over the PI's private
Yeah,
practice.
that's
Go
that's
talk to
not good
them."
enough. That's not good enough.
No, go talk to them. I don't know who.
Oh, they will talk to them,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that they won't talk to you.
Well, yeah, they'll ask me who to talk to. Okay, go talk to this
No,
person.
they would say that you were part of the study. You
Yeah,
should have
part of the
known better.
study.
What processes did you have to prevent this from happening?
My contract and my source. You want to see? We'll configure
Yeah.
the e-source together.
So they will show you. You will show them that we were billing for this. How will you show them that they should not have been billing for this? How will you demonstrate that to them?
I'll show them my CTMS if they want. This
But
is
that
how
all
we
that
get
shows
paid.
is what you billed for. It does not show you what they shouldn't be billing for.
Right. That's out of our. We don't own the private practice.
And that's the problem. So you need to have controls in place for that.
Yeah,
So
go
there are
talk to
people,
that person. Leave me alone.
and that may be problematic. And people
Next
again,
question, we get Darshan in here. How about that? I'll tell them that. They'll scare them away.
um, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this. DOJ came out in 2021, and they've said every year since then that clinical trials is one of the four things that they're targeting as we speak.
Mhm.
ORI, Office of Research Integrity, has been targeting huge. I think we did this the last time I was on, where I showed you the huge clinical trial sites that they've gone after. It was Penn, it was Duke. Duke paid 125 million for
Sure,
research fraud issues.
sure.
Completely different situation, but again, clinical trials are being targeted. Get your stuff in line. Make sure everything's lined up properly. But yeah,
Mhm.
we're, we're getting towards the end though. We're almost like at the 1 hour mark.
These
But
are
yeah,
always so good, man, because a lot of people, they can't maybe afford an attorney, and
right,
again, not legal advice, but at
right,
least we're showing you where you need to be digging deeper,
yeah,
right? So you're not just randomly digging places. At least Darshan pointed out 4 or 5 different spots. You need to check your processes
yeah,
and make it doesn't hurt to have a conversation with him. He's
yeah.
available on LinkedIn. His link is underneath this video and in the show notes, and
Please, yeah,
you'll see him regularly. I'm actually exploring. We've worked with you in the past at different companies, but I'm exploring possibly keeping you on retainer. Just
Yeah,
I've talked to my
that's what
team,
a lot
but
of high performing sites do.
yeah.
'Cause-
Well, thank
So
you for high performing. I think we're medium performing right now, but we're working towards high
there,
at some point. But
it's
I
it's
appreciate you
getting to the
coming
point
on.
where those fires become processes. They're managed, and that's what you're looking at.
Yes, and you definitely scare the shit out of anyone who is thinking about starting a site. I've been a
Right.
site owner for almost 20 years. I'm like, should I be doing this? But it's not that crazy. You just need some help, guys.
Yeah.
Reach out to Darshan.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate this.
But this
We
was
had
great
a
as always. We got
record.
to do this again.
We had
And
a
as
lot
always,
of
stop
viewers
by.
on. Like, subscribe, comment, share. I gotta go to the site and put out fires. Bye bye.
Bye.